Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Jiayanu, Pakhairagale, Ni Hao, Chunushume, Washmale, Ohio Gonzaimas, Guten Morgen, Ola, Boyo, Privyat, Kaifahal, Halishuma Chatore, Ahlan Masal Marhaba, Buna, Mucho, Gracias, Swabi, Balli Kareaya, Hoj Galden and Ayasaya, Huyamura, Chivato, Chihal Jot, Kalimera, Khairutan, and a very warm welcome to everybody who's tuned into PTV World and watching World this morning. Alongside my very well-learned colleague who happens to be Miss Haja Satti. I happen to be Shahzad Hassan Khan, and we hope and pray that everybody out there is doing wonderfully well and that you're ready to kickstart your day with us. But first things first, hello Haja. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Kaifa halik?
Walaikum assalam. Thank you so much, Jazakallah khair, for introducing me. So today happens to be a Tuesday. It's a fine morning in Islamabad, and we are often witnessing a cloudy weather. But having said so, the weather is generally very nice, accompanied by the humidity, and humidity level is not very high as it is used to be in the previous days. We are enjoying it. But Shahzad, I wanted to ask you something,
sure.
Especially that too early in the morning. That is that I've often asked you that, what gives you power, what gives you momentum, especially at the moments when you're feeling low, because as a human we are also feeling low and highs of the moment. This is what life is all about, right? Yeah. But then exactly that's a very millennial thing to ask, because nowadays there is a concept of energy healing, right? So whenever you are feeling low, so you can make sure that you can release those negative emotions outside your body, and then you can remove it, and then you can heal yourself. And healing is very much important because this is the concept that has been associated with the earth, and we're exploring a lot of those traditions in which maybe religions or traditions in which the concept of healing is very integrated, right? So do
you want me to answer the question?
Sure,
okay. So I think I've been on a roller coaster right now. Imagine that, when I was growing up, I had this very phenomena to myself, and that was that I used to think that I've got a chimney up here and that I'm going to take away all of that negativity that I have in me. And then there was another phase.
How did you come up with this notion? I'm sorry.
I don't know. I don't know. It just came to me naturally that for whatever things which used to bother me, I used to think at night, there's a chimney, and how chimney actually kind of throws away the black smoke. And I was like, okay, so for all of those things which are actually worrying me or are bothersome for me are actually going out. So I used to, do deep breathing, inhaling and exhaling. I used to like, okay, sab kuch chala gaya. So I used to think that. Then there was another phase where I used to actually kind of get that energy from my friends, from my family. They would support me, they would push me, and I would be like, okay, I have to do something for them, and then you feel responsible. But then later on, I think that which you are destined to come to this point, inshallah, if you strive for it, and that's the power of faith. When you start to kind of blindly have faith on Allah Almighty and say that Allah, ye maine aapke hawale kiya, and that's it. And I think that there onwards, there's no stopping. You cannot fall back because of the fact that you are actually believing in the Almighty, and that it will take time, but it will come eventually. What about you?
That's very true, and I think energy healing and all of this concept, that's a very millennial sort of a concept, because when we were growing up, that was why I was asking that how did you come up with this notion? Because I don't think so there was much conversation on this particular topic. But now as we are growing up, as we are witnessing that how Generation Z and the dynamics of millennials, they are very different from the baby boomers generation or from our parents' generation. And we are witnessing that, yes, our planet needs a lot of healing, and with that I think we would like to dissect this concept of energy healing. What does that mean? And then there is a concept of energy vampires. Who exactly are the energy vampires, and how can we protect that energy shield, and how to explain this concept to a lot of other people out there, right? Because when we talk about healing, the very conservative or traditional method that comes into mind is going to the doctor, right? But then there are a lot of other methods that have propped up, like mind body therapies, and how to
meditation,
be in your grounding, how to be inside your body. What is exactly that, and how can we explain it in a holistic manner? We're very glad that we have been joined by someone who happens to be an energy healer herself. She is not just a poet, she is also a social activist. We are very glad that we have been joined by Ms. Sadaf Raza. Assalamu alaikum, Ms. Sadaf, and thank you so much for coming to our show.
Walaikum assalam, and thank you for having me.
Right, Jazakallah khair. And Ms. Sadaf, the first question that we would like to ask you is that how do you explain to people, what do you do, particularly when we talk about energy healing, as I talked about it, the first thing that comes into the mind when we talk about healing is, going to the doctors. Or maybe, from some Peer Baba or, spiritual healers or faith healers, right? But then there's another, I would say, a quota of people coming up, or a different field of people coming up where they're talking about energy healing. How do you explain it?
Well, it's a it's not for everyone.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay?
You can't heal someone who doesn't want healing.
Yes, consent is very much required, and you need to be at a certain place in your body, in your soul, open to receiving this from the universe.
Okay.
So, if you are not informed in your own self, I am not saying that you need to know what it is, but once you open yourself that I am going to receive a holistic healing, I understand that there need to be a change in me,
Yeah.
then you find people like me.
I think that's true. Thank you so much for saying that. And obviously, consent is certainly required. You know, even if you are going for a surgery, the doctor will come and ask you, you know, whether you're up for it or not. Now, when we talk about it, I think for people to kind of understand, because it's very hypothetical for us
Yeah,
to understand,
yeah,
because
yeah.
you know, there's no definition of it
Yeah,
which will explain it
yeah.
unless you've experienced it yourself. But because we're using energy as a medium to heal others, how do we do that? You know, and what sort of illnesses are we talking about? Are we talking about migraine? Are we talking about financial crisis? Are we talking about anxiety, depression? Are we talking about my kidneys not working properly? I got energy healing; it's working properly now. Is it?
Holistic healing is not only for the body.
Okay.
It is for your energy, that is your aura, that
Okay.
is the situation you are in. It is for your emotions, it is for your mind. So, when we say that it is for your complete self, then it is going, it's not time bound.
Okay.
So, it is not a situation in the future which is creating anxiety in the present can be healed.
Okay.
A situation in the past which is creating a trauma that is disturbing you in the present can be healed.
All right.
Now, body is just a place where the disease manifests. Before that, the disease is there, and it happens for so many reasons.
So why do we get a disease, or why do we get ill?
Patterns.
Okay.
Patterns are determined by our thoughts, our emotions, our actions based on that, our interactions, communication, everything determines who we are, how we are going to act in this world.
Right.
And the problem is that the world has a lot of conditioning over us.
Okay.
Oh,
So,
yes.
we form opinions and perceptions about things, and we try to be what the world is telling us, not listening to the
ourselves.
truth of ourselves.
Yeah.
So, when you do not embrace who you are,
Right.
of course, at one point your self rebellion will take place.
But,
Yeah.
but Sidif, we've seen when you talk about this sort of wellness models, and we have seen if you talk about the evolution or how they become popular in the media discourses, in the popular discourses, we'll find that evolution stems from the West, and West has borrowed this model from the yoga, from the meditation, from our Eastern traditions,
Yeah.
right, or from our subcontinent particularly. And when we talk about healing, obviously, and one of the problem that you find in the Western societies is that they have dissociated themselves from the religion, and they find a lot of void in their soul, right? Because you cannot dissociate Allah from anything out there,
Yeah.
because He is the creator, He is present everywhere
Yeah.
and everywhere, right? Omnipresent. So how do you integrate it with the Islamic models? Because in our society, the dynamics are very different. You know, we are very close to faith, or I mean, in other words, we do practice the rituals, faith-based rituals. So, and how do you explain it to the people out there, integrating it within our traditions and presenting something new out there?
Well, you know, the source of all shifa is Allah.
Allah.
True.
Al-Shafi.
Okay, and we are just channels, and that we need to understand. The channel, it can be a person, it can be a pinch of earth, it can be a tablet, it can be a conversation, it can be a smile, it can be a presence. So, Allah decides where you get shifa once you open yourself up
True.
to that thing.
True.
The problem is that we don't. We are not, you know, we say that we have faith, but to have that complete faith.
Yeah, I was about to ask you this as well.
Yeah,
you know, so
true.
when you said that the problem is that we don't, you know, that means that we do not open up because we do not trust the process, we do not trust the individual, we do not want to put our trust into something which we haven't experienced before.
Too much information in the world,
Yeah.
too much knowledge creates chaos.
Okay.
Okay? People are so fragmented in their thoughts, they are so fractured, they are all over the place, they don't know where they exist. See, we say in spirituality, because I am into that process, the more you ascend, the more simpler
more
easy,
quieter.
you become in yourself.
All right.
Oh, really?
The
How?
chaos settles down.
That's true. That's true. You know,
That's true.
because even it's a hadith as well. You know, where Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam has emphasized this onto staying quiet as well for longer period of times and how it will help you become more religious as well. But in addition to this, for the normal and common understanding for our audiences in 47 different countries, what's the difference in between going to an energy healer or a conventional doctor?
Yeah. So when you come to an energy healer, he or she is going to ask you questions.
Which you might not want to answer.
Yeah. But then this is the process where you need to open up.
Yeah, so
You
I'm
need
going to give everybody an example as well. You know, so I came to work, you know, I felt like throwing up today. You know, I sat down with her and I was like, you know, I just feel like throwing up. She was like, what happened last night? And I was like, yeah, I had a cookie. She was like, no, something else happened. I was like, yeah, I had an argument with my wife. You know, so she was like, okay, you know, I think we're getting there. So opening up will always be very essential. People will not open up. If you have gone to an energy healer, it might not work for you. Yeah, please continue.
Sometimes they don't open up. So
Yeah.
fine. When we do the healing, when I do the healing with them, the meditation or hands-on or distant, whatever mode I am, and you know, again, it's going to come to me, okay, with this client, I am going to go like this. This is all divine guidance which is given to us.
Ahmed.
So, yeah, you can say, I don't go into all that kind of stuff. Anyway, I get the guidance according to my client that this client needs this thing. So, when I do that process, the things sometimes they don't even tell me, and then they say, but like we never mentioned this. How do you know this? Who told you this? Said, this is required for your healing.
Yeah.
I'm not going to make a big issue out of it, where I get it, who is telling me. The most important thing is that that needs to come out in the open for you to heal, because this is what is stuck in you.
But this is a little spooky anyways, you know, if there are things where people are telling you and you haven't actually shared them with anybody.
I think that's a very important point, and I think we also need to explore, because of the energy healing and its popularity within the millennials, or especially how it's popular in tackling the anxiety or depression and mental illnesses. We've seen that there's a mushrooming growth of energy healers, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, there might be a lot of fraudulent practices out there, because whenever there's a commercialization process going on, you can never judge the intentions of other person except for Allah, right? So how do we identify that who's the good healer, and how do we protect our energy field so as to that fake healer is not intruding in it and, you know, not in being the energy vampire or absorbing it?
My dear, healing is the only modality, I believe, that comes from a lot of love.
Okay.
The healer, the person you are going to, need to embody that love. It needs to carry that unconditional love of God. And if that vibe you're not getting from that person, your body, your energy is telling you there is something wrong, but no, because the whole world is following, or probably that person is doing, you know, see, that's why I don't go into like the details of what we were talking before.
But Ms. Sidaf, how do we identify our intuition, gut feeling, and if that's a response from an anxiety? Because when we are very anxious, our body is in that state of mind, you know, where it is protecting us, and sometimes that protections become very suffocating, right? So how do we identify if it's an intuition coming from within your body,
do we get that
or
sign?
it's the anxiety?
Anxiety again is a place of chaos.
Yeah, it is.
Intuition is not a place of chaos. Intuition is just a slight whispering. It's not intruding. No, you know, when you sit with yourself, when you reflect on your things, when you start reflecting on your thoughts and emotions, you'll come to know what is negative, anxiety, chaos, and what is the true guidance. A true guidance is just like a hint. A very small something. If you catch it, you catch it. If you leave it, you
Can I add something over here?
Yes.
Because this is something I don't know, you know, so, you know, because you are here, so I'm taking advantage of this opportunity. So I think with intuition, it needs to be in the first few milliseconds of your time, you know, where you get the intuition, okay, yaar, ye ho sakta hai, or, you know, this might be the possibility. It can be far beyond than 1 second as well. Probably people who practice this too much, they might get it. But with me, this is something that I have thought, you know, whenever you see something and you have to be intuitive about it, it's the first, you know, just the way, you know, you saw it and it should be there.
But sometimes it happens is that what I am intending as the intuition, or like you mentioning the millisecond, is something that's not the case at all, right? The things were not as I perceived them to be, and what I was
They
wondering.
came out different.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
What I was thinking, it was an intuition or a gut feeling or a message from the universe, or whatever language you couch it in.
Yeah.
That might be not the case exactly.
We have
How do
simplified the question for you
Yes, now understand. We all have an energy pattern.
now. Okay.
Okay, we are energetic beings. Understanding this is very difficult.
True.
Okay, because we are used to seeing ourselves as emotions and thoughts and body. We do not see ourselves as energetic beings. Now we are energetic beings and we have a certain signature.
Okay.
My energetic signature may not match with yours.
Okay.
Okay. Now my energetic signature changes with time, situations, disease, problems, whatever is going on around and within.
Yeah.
Now a certain point, if I have a certain energetic signature, let's say, that energy is seeking the similar energy. This
Okay.
is how we go about in life.
Yeah. That's
We
true.
are beings seeking each other. And when sometimes we just come together like this, and sometimes we are together like this, and then we are pulled apart. Because at that moment your energy is not matching with that person.
All right.
And because we are constantly in this process.
Right.
We are constantly, and our energy keeps shifting and changing.
Yeah.
So what you are saying is completely right as well.
True.
That sometimes you are coming, like you're a different person because of a situation, you are changed. Now the intuition is going to be according to the person you are changed.
Right.
true.
The way you have become, the way you have evolved, or for that matter, you know, down, because it's not always evolution, you go down as
That's
well.
true.
Of course, and I think that's
That's what life is.
essential part of the learning when you talk about it. So, Ms. Sadaf, we've seen a lot, you talked about the patterns that we imbibe, right? And those patterns are also inherited genetically from our parents and from their parents and from our ancestors. And we've seen that when we talk about healing, there are lots of, so there's a lot of conversation on father's trauma or the mother's trauma, because the way their generational patterns were, and they were imbibed and inherited from one generation to another generation. How do we break those, I mean, generational traumas? And that too, when you're talking about a very near and dear to the kith and kin of ours, because obviously in our cultures, we give a lot of respect to our parents, and I think rightly so, they deserve it. But I think sometimes when we talk about healing, I mean, that's an essential element to address
I
that.
will not call it trauma. There is a specific word for it. It's called mother's wound and father's wound.
Yeah.
Okay.
In psychology, it's called trauma.
Trauma. Of course, trauma could be like, you
In
know,
spirituality, it's wound. Yeah.
wound. The problem is that the parents' wounds are the most difficult to heal.
Yes.
It's my experience, since I have like so many clients.
Because it's not easy to identify
Yes,
them in first
yes.
place. Yes.
And it happens at a stage when you are completely vulnerable, where your energy is very pure, where you are open to the influences. And your parents are the first protector, the caregiver.
True.
And that is the place of, it's a home and it's a place of complete trust. You shouldn't be that. But then this is the world.
पैंटी इतनी लगाती थी अम्मियाँ हमारे ज़माने में, तो इतनी मार पड़ी है मुझे तो.
We all used to get. But frankly, at my stage, I do not justify any kind of violence, no matter
Obviously.
for whatever reason it is
Obviously.
being done. Because every child is an individual.
Alhamdulillah.
Every child comes with a certain,
And
you
different,
know,
different personality.
So we are not our parents, and we shouldn't aim to be.
Right.
We should become what we are, what Allah wants us to be, with our own potential.
But Miss
We need not to be in their image.
But Ms. Sadaf, what if your own parents are your energy vampires, right? Like you talked about it. How to heal from that trauma?
You know, for example, you know, the parents do not talk to each other. Imagine that, you know, they're actually kind of consuming all the energy of their children. You know, they really need to kind of sit down, talk with each other, do whatever their affairs are.
Yeah.
You know, sort them out yourself.
The first thing when my client, they come with this situation, there is a thing called cord cutting.
Cord cutting.
Yes.
Cord
Cutting meditation.
What we do is that we disengage the energy.
Okay.
You know, we are all energetically connected.
Yep.
We are all in the world. So if you take back your energy, that investment which you have done in that relationship or with that person, then you come to a place of peace.
Okay.
Because all chaos comes from that entanglement, that energy which is invested in something, project, person, whatever. So you break that cord.
Okay.
You take back your energy. So you come to a place of peace and you can peacefully coexist.
Yeah, thank you so much for using this term, because I was about to ask you that does that necessarily mean that you kind of have a disconnect then, you know?
You are going to have a disconnect of energy, which
Okay.
means you will not get triggered by whatever is going on.
you know, आपने जो कहना कहते रहे, मुझे फर्क नहीं पड़ता.
yes.
Something like
you
that.
come to a place of indifference, but you will not come to a place of inhumanity.
All right.
That is,
Yeah.
you need to
You
understand.
know, you obviously are going to behave as a gentleman or a lady
You are
as
going
well.
to be a good person, but you are not going to be triggered, because the problem is we get triggered and then we react.
Now let's move on to another subject, because I think that this is something that I've lived through myself, because alhamdulillah I go world over to do shows, and you know I'm hosting and you know singing and whatnot. Now imagine that there was a time period from probably 2015 till 17 or 18 where people used to come up to me for selfies, and eventually when I used to open up with them, you know, they used to say that, you know, sir, when we used to look you from far apart, you know, it looked like as if you're going to be very rowdy, or you're going to be, you know, not this nice and whatnot, you know, till the time so we saw you, that's what it is. So what about the perception of somebody else's energy? How do you perceive somebody else's energy, whether, you know, is it okay for me to kind of approach them, whether I should talk with them, sit down with them, you know, how do you do that? How do you judge somebody else's energy?
The kind of role you are in, you are given light, and there are going to be thousands and millions who are going to get light from you.
Okay.
So you are that powerhouse, that generator, and wherever you are going to go, people are going to borrow your light. So you need to understand this is what Allah has made for you, and while it is a blessing, sometimes it becomes very difficult as well.
And Ms. Sadaf, now let's bring us to a very important topic, because we are living in a society, in a social media, where narcissistic tendencies are rewarded a lot, right? And especially with the social media, we have seen that how your ego is inflated, and how it tends to, upgrade yourself, or and makes you disconnected from your true inner self, right? So when we talk about energy healing session, now let's also discuss the very important dynamics, that is the empath versus the narcissist dynamics, right? So if your parents, one of the parents is narcissist, or if one of the brother or sister is narcissist, or if your partner is narcissist, you know, as an empath, how do you take back your energy, and how does it feel like, in all those energy sessions?
People are nice, and people are toxic. People are negative and people are positive.
And I think a lot of toxic people appear nice. This is how they attract other people out, right?
Yes, the energy vampires, as you were talking about. You always have the right to have any form of association you want, and to whatever degree.
Yep.
The problem is that because of the pressures, you know, we lower our defenses. We let those toxic people, their energy, their thoughts, their emotions take over us.
True.
They just trample us, and they just walk over us, and then at the end we are just sitting with, you know, empathy is good, but you need to guard your energy, you need to guard your level of engagement, and even with your siblings, even with your parents, even with your blood relatives, because if there is no unconditional love, people say this word a lot,
I love you unconditionally,
love, but then what is going on? There's a lot of blackmail, there's a lot of emotional hostage taking, because I have given you this, you are indebted to life, to me, because of this. Now once once you come to a place of complete awareness, and that awareness is that yes, you need to be understanding, kind, empathetic, not sympathetic. You need to understand someone's pain, their experiences, but you don't need to devalue yourself.
That's true.
And you don't need to seek validation from them. We get compromised because we are seeking validation from those who are least interested in validating
And we've spoken about it as well. Now imagine that you're not going to ask for guidance for somebody, you know, who's actually in Peshawar, and you need to go to Lahore. You know, you'll certainly seek guidance from somebody who's in Lahore. Now very quickly, towards the end of this segment, there's one more important aspect which we need to discuss, and that is that we live in this world, right? And there are very few people who live within the body that they have been blessed with Allah Almighty. How do you think that we can do both? You know, probably if that's possible, or probably do one, live within our own body?
Yes, I love this because this is what I am telling my clients all the time. You know, what we are, what we have become is all the world. We carry, we wear clothes, what people are saying look good on us. We eat the food which people think is good for us or which is there in the. So we are doing all that the world is telling us. We are never ever listening to ourselves.
True.
So if you live in the world, then you lose yourself. Yourself, the soul diminishes. The light within you becomes less and less and less. And there comes a point where there is just a void inside of you. You may be living a very full life, but the moments when you are alone, you're not alone, you're lonely.
Exactly.
There's a difference between alone and being lonely.
True.
So your alone needs to be completely filled with light, with you, who you are. And that can only happen if you keep a balance between the world and who you are as your energy and as yourself.
And I think that is why we always advocate, and I particularly advocate that solitude is very much important, because self-reflection, meditation is something that you will find repeatedly reiterated in different traditions, and that is why meditation is important, because solitude allows you to reflect within. And there's a very interesting Japanese perspective or Japanese practice that at the end of the day, they take 5 minutes and they self-reflect, you know, what happened the entire day. And that is why I think it's very much important that we need to do that. Thank you so much, Ms. Sadaf, for coming here, for enlightening us about healing sessions, what exactly is the healing energy. And when we talk about energy healing, obviously we were talking about the humans, but we also need to talk about how can we heal this Mother Nature or the planet that we call Earth. Because of our practices, because of our greed and lust, we have made it in a place that is becoming a very inhabitable, right? To how to make it more healthier and how to heal it. We are going to talk about it, but after a short break. Don't go anywhere.
Good morning.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Thank you so much for staying tuned to PTV World. You're watching World this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, earlier we were talking about energy healing, the concept of it, and for a better understanding for all our viewers who are out there, we were in conversation with our wonderful guest, Ms. Sadaf. But now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to move on where we update you on what's happening. Now, imagine that the NDMA's, I think it was the Flood Forecasting Division, which actually kind of released a statement saying that that there will be flooding in coming days as well because of the water in the tributaries. But looking at the north of Pakistan, we do see how unfortunately the infrastructure is being damaged just because of the fact of that there's been a lot of monsoon rains and there's been an impact. Now, how we really need to kind of come across that is something that we will be talking about. We'll update you on how the condition is. We're very lucky that we've been joined by a water scientist all the way from Netherlands, Amsterdam. He is Mr. Muhammad Abdullah. Hello, Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum. How are you doing today?
Walaikum salam. I'm doing good. Thank you very much for having me. How are you guys doing?
Thank you. Alhamdulillah. I think weather is really nice. But Abdullah, let's start with the unfolding of this weather pattern. And I think Met Department used to give a very accurate sort of a weather prediction. But we are witnessing in this season particularly, those predictions are not very accurate, right? So is it something wrong with the Met Department or forecasting system, or the weather patterns or climatic conditions have changed so much abnormally that we are witnessing this sort of situation?
I think it's a kind of mix of both, but I will rely more on the climate change itself, because the patterns are so dramatically different that our models that we had for forecasting are not trained that much. We have to train them and calibrate them. But if I give you an example, like recently in Lahore, I think it's more than 353 millimeter rainfall.
44 years record was
44 years record has been broken. So you can understand what is the reason and what are the patterns, and these drastic changes are the reasons that we are not very accurate. And it's not just in Pakistan. If you look at in Germany, if you look at in other big countries, sometimes also in the Netherlands, it can happen. So these drastic changes are the reason, but what we can do, we cannot just sit idle. We can just improve and calibrate our model so that we can predict better and better.
And Abdullah, when we talk about the early warning systems, because obviously Pakistan relies a lot on the agricultural part of aspect, right? And when we talk about farmers and the sowing and the reaping of the crops, obviously it depends a lot on the climatic changes, right? On the weather patterns, on the rainfall patterns. So how can we make our early warning system more robust as to respond to these abnormal sort of climatic changes?
I think one thing is that we have a season of monsoon. So one thing is for sure that we know there's going to be a lot of rain, and there is always a flood, at least in Pakistan.
True.
If not a very massive flood, there is always, you know, a low level of flood. So there has to be those things that we can say like, okay, this month has started, the month of August is going to rain a lot. So people that are living close to the river, or people that are living on those hillies or on the embankments or the landsliding area should move around or should move back. So these could be the early warning. For example, right now if we look at, I think in Sawat, there was a landsliding because of the rain, and it's
we
just
had
cut off
people
with the
from the
barcode.
northern areas over here to speak about it as well. Yes, they were landsliding.
Yeah, this just happened recently, I think a few weeks back, and there were a lot of
It
tourists.
wasn't in Sawat. The place was a different place, you know, where the other, we had the guest the other day as well, where they said that, you know, that our home, I think it was
Swabi or Swat, something like this, but it is in there near to the Balakot.
Yes.
Okay, okay. Yeah, it's one of that city, but the problem basically is this, that if we had warned the tourists not to go there, the flood season has started on the rainy or irregular monsoon has started, maybe they wouldn't have gone there. So these are the basic things that we can tell, apart from improving our weather prediction models and everything. So if it's like when the season for the crop cultivation comes, we are aware. Sometimes it's 2 weeks earlier, 2 weeks later, depending on the heat. Just like that, we know that this is the month of monsoon, so our tourists and our management and government should warn the people.
A lot of conversation that surrounds the climate change is usually very gloom and doom, right? So when we're talking about how we are actually contributing towards the degradation of our environment, of the earth, but we've also witnessed some of the changes. I don't know, as a scientist, you will tell us that whether they are the positive changes. For example, there was a news that how in Saudi Arabia, entire desert has turned bloomed with the flowers out there, right? Or if you see in our southern part of the Punjab, which was really a desert, but now it's a very fertile area. People are sowing their crops, they're planting there. So what are some of the opportunities that we can benefit from this entire change in the abnormalities in the weather patterns and climate change when we talk about it?
Yeah, I mean, you can also look at it as a blessing in disguise.
Yes.
For example, there are some countries that used to get more water. Now they are more they're having more droughts instead of floods or more rainfall. But Pakistan is lucky enough to be on the receiving end of more water, more rainfall. But
we're receiving more water, but we need to kind of preserve it as
exactly,
well.
that's what I was about to say. For example, Dubai wasn't ready to receive that much water, and we saw what happened. But if I compare, like, I am proud of what happened recently, like in Lahore, it was more rain. I mean, I think it's twice the time in Dubai.
In a day's time.
Exactly, it was twice the time than in Dubai, and within a few hours they managed all the water, and the city didn't get flooded. But in Dubai, they had, I think, 100 something, 173.
People had like 5-6 days off.
Yeah,
from work.
5-6 days off. It was like half of what we had in Lahore last week.
Yeah,
so
and the only car you could see, you know, on the street was a Tesla, because, you know, it was an electric car. You know, so
but you cannot charge your car in that time. I mean, there is always a fear of getting electric shock.
Exactly. So but coming back to what Haja has asked, and, you know, I would certainly want you to complete it as well. Where we speak of opportunity, I just want to add on over here where how we have seen nations, you know, just the neighboring nations, how their per acre yield has actually gone up now. You know, so they've used mechanisms to their favor, where they're producing more wheat, more mangoes, you know, everything more.
That's true, that's true. I mean, when I started studying this degree of flood risk management, we were taught that there are 5 things, 5 seasons: summer, winter, spring, autumn, and floods.
Yeah.
Flood is also a season. I didn't know
like
this
a
before.
smog is also a season in Pakistan, right?
Yeah,
5th season.
But if we look at in the ecosystem and in the natural system, in nature has flood is a system. So me being the new naive student at that time, I said, you know what, I want to be the best flood risk manager. I want to make sure that this world is flood proof, there is no floods. My professor told me, if there are no floods, we will be dead. because we need floods to flourish.
But
like you said, the ecosystem and the
Yeah.
yield has increased. When the flood comes or when the rainfall fall happens, it helps in cultivating the barren land, and those seeds and sediments that fall across from the top to the
it's an ecosystem, yeah.
Exactly.
Exactly.
So
but you know, having said so, you know, did you study water sciences from Pakistan?
No, I studied it from Netherlands.
But do they get floods in Netherlands?
Yeah, they do get. They get the coastal floods, and I was actually in 5 countries.
Okay.
So my first semester was in Germany.
Wow.
They have the same as riverine floods.
Yeah.
Then I went to Netherlands for the second semester in Delft, where Dr.
Is it because you were a great student, or were you weren't a great
It's the part of the program, so I just got the
Erasmus
scholarship.
program. Yeah,
Erasmus.
Yeah.
And then I went to US. We had a summer course there, and they had those tornadoes. I happened to study about that. Then we went to Spain. They had the droughts and flash flooding like in Pakistan. Then we went to Slovenia. They have a lot of glaciers, so we had to study about those flash flooding.
You could have come down to Pakistan, you could have gotten
exactly. It's like we went to 5 countries to study what's happening in just one country of Pakistan.
Yeah.
So this is where I learned all about this, and yeah.
And Abdullah, I've seen, especially in the West, in the US, that they are habitual of having those coastal floods. You know, the what do you call it, cyclones, and all of these names, right?
Yeah.
What are they doing differently that doesn't impact their daily life as much as in Pakistan, right? So what can we learn from their model that we can replicate it here? Apart from being obviously investing in the resources, and we are a very resource deprived, I would say, cash deprived nation, right? So what can we do?
I mean, I don't want to say anything political, but if I say it in a nice way, is that I think our politicians need to be mature enough instead of just bashing each other and fighting for things that I don't know if they really matter or not. They can have a big heart and they just let people work for 5 years. They are elected. So maybe then they have the energy to focus and manage.
Right.
If every day we are listening that
exactly.
A new policy unrolls, right?
So we have a new
Short-term
policy. People don't know if tomorrow they are going to be in the office or not. This is the big problem.
True.
First, our government has
some sort of charter.
Yes. Second, the management. Obviously, if the head of the table is not putting the focus on the management, people there maybe like they can get lazy.
Yeah.
Third, educating the masses itself. I think there's a huge part, more than the government and the management, is on the people, on the nation itself. If we remember, I think we do remember 2 years back in Sawat, there was a hotel. He built it basically in the center of that river.
And once again, he built it there.
He built it again there.
Yeah.
He built it again there. So we are not learning from our mistakes. And then he's going to start crying again, oh, climate change, flood, give me some money. My livelihood has been ruined, just washed away.
True.
So I think the strictness of the rules is very, very important.
Right.
And then I think we can at least protect ourselves at least 80 to 90% in Pakistan.
Yeah, thank you so much for hitting the nail on the head. And these are the essentials for everybody to live actually a very healthy and a wealthy life as well. Ladies and gentlemen, I think that the message has been given very diplomatically by our wonderful guest over here.
Thank you.
And that's exactly the message. You know, we really need to stick to one plan, make sure that we achieve it first. You know, whether wrong or right, you know, we shouldn't be deciding it in between. Oh, yaar, ye galat faisla ho gaya, ye sahi hoga. I think we should decide, we should get the best brains, sat them together, and make sure that, you know, once the plan is decided, we just go to achieve it or ace it as well. And I think that will, you know, that way we will actually get better as well. But thank you so much, Abdullah,
Thank you
for
so
being
much
with us.
for
Lovely to be in conversation with you. Thank you so much, Haja. It's always amazing to be besides you, you know, hosting a show, because the most learned questions actually come from you as well. And ladies and gentlemen, until next time, it's goodbye. Look after yourselves. It's a good morning over here. Until next time, look after yourselves. Allah.
And good morning.
Good morning.